Well, good afternoon, everybody. And before we ask, no, we are not closing because there were a few snowflakes in. We are going to remain open. Welcome everyone to the next in our series on the Provost Conversations on Teaching and Learning. I want to say a special thank you to Tom Socha, who's our speaker today, for stepping in at the last minute to be able to fill the gap when we found we had one. The topic is an interesting one, mutual respect, and what really makes that faculty-student interaction at its best. And I'm sure, to digress from the script a little here, that we've all received those emails from students that begin, yo, if you even get that, and you know, where's my, you know, fill in the blank. And without any thank you, and sometimes without even a name at the end of it, you know. And so if we could somehow instill a little email, you know, etiquette, I think that would be a nice thing to do. But beyond that, I think a lot of it is about, it's not so much what we say, it's how we say it, and particularly in electronic conversations, how it can be interpreted. Because we've got our own voice in our head when we type out those words, and somebody else has a different voice in their head when they read them. And so that's a really critical part of it too, how a message is perceived. And Tom, I hope, is going to help us to think through that. Tom Socha is a professor of communication, is a 24-year veteran of the communication program, is currently director of the new Masters in Lifespan and Digital Communication in the Communication and Theatre Arts program. And so, essentially today what Tom is going to try and do is to increase our awareness of, again, what we say and how we say it, and particularly in the context of how we interact with our students when we're teaching. So I'm going to hand over to you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Appreciate being here. They tell me that the mic is for you guys to use. I have a mic, but when we ask questions, and we will do some interaction to begin with, if you thought you were just going to sit quietly, that's not how I roll. What we're going to do is, I want you to start to think a little bit about what does it mean to communicate at our best. Okay? So the first question is, in what kind of situations in life, in general, do you want to put your best communication foot forward? Okay? What kinds of circumstances do you want to go, I got to be my best if I'm when? What do you think? Let's go. Everybody's going to participate.
I would say always, because you never know who you're talking to or who they may know or what may lead to other opportunities, etc. So
okay, so you always should be at your communication best.
You should try, yes.
Try. Okay, how about Sandy? What do you think?
When I'm advising a student, I need to be very clear.
Good, especially with a nationally award-winning advising person, right, who's one. So, Carol, when you're when do you feel the need to be absolutely at your communication best?
When I'm communicating with Faculty Senate. Yeah, or faculty in general, but really to communicate clearly.
All right, because that could be torturous, and it's like the UN, right? How about you? When communication at your best?
When you're teaching a really complex subject for the first time for your students.
Good. So when complexity increases, we've got to be clearer and slower and paced because we don't want to have to do it again. Good. How about you?
Maybe when you have a challenging or awkward situation, you have a sense that it's going to be difficult even before you start the conversation.
Challenging or awkward in what way? Like because of the topic, or
maybe it's an interaction with a student or another faculty member where you have to raise a concern or an issue.
Good. Conflict circumstance where there'd be a divergence of point of view.
That's what I was going to say too. When somebody's mad at you, then that's the time when you really want to communicate well.
Good. Yeah, when you think there's going to be some negative energy or negative affect coming back. Yes, perfect.
I concur always. Always I want to convey a message to anyone. I prefer, you know, as clear as possible and all the time.
So it wouldn't matter where I am, I've got to be as clear as possible. I love it. Good.
This is one of those cover your ass kind of remarks. I would say, especially in written communication, where I theoretically have the time to respond and think about what I'm going to say, and then furthermore am potentially subsequently held accountable for what I've said by lots of different people.
Exactly. So you got to craft the message carefully because there's multiple people, and once it leaves your control, left your control. Absolutely. What do you think?
With my family.
Ooh, good. Okay. You want to be at your best because you want to give them and invest in them. We're going to come back to that. I love that one. Absolutely.
I think communicating with, interacting with people that you have limited contact with. So, like, let's say you just meet with them for the first time. You really want to be on your best because you never know if you're going to see them again.
Okay. So you don't know them. You're going to see them, may see them in the future. Not sure. Want to present your best. Kind of like a first date.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I think I agree with the two comments before, just all the time. You want to make sure what you're saying is what is actually being understood.
Good, good, perfect, absolutely. And we'll give it to another communication professor.
And I echo the comments in the back about your family, but also my wife's family, and especially my mother-in-law. So, especially at my best.
Want to be at your best there because it's very important to do that. Super. And what do you think?
When I'm being recorded, because I never know what I will look like on YouTube.
It's true. It's true. You want to jump in?
I hadn't even thought of it.
Okay.
I'm in another headset.
Well, she's communicating at her best now. Right.
Is less more better with your in-laws?
Smiling and nodding. Yes.
Right. Well, you've given us a lot of scenarios, right? And when we think about it also with our students, right, we've had some examples with our students advising when it's going to be conflictful, when we have a difficult topic, right, we want to present. And usually it's the first day of the year, first day of the semester. You know, you pay attention to what you're wearing, and you come in, and it's all a new semester, and you never know what you're going to get. It's all a wonderful, fresh faces, already excited to learn things, and you're energetic, and they're energetic, and you're all ready to go, okay? Well, what I want you to think about is, what does it really mean, though, to be at our communication best? These are circumstances when we want to do something a bit better, right, when we want to convey ourselves a bit clearer, but what does it really mean to be at our communication best? I can't give you a whole communication degree in 40 minutes. That's impossible. What I can do is maybe get us to think about some elements of the process that we have under our control that may help that to be at our communication best, right? Because what it means to be at our communication best for some people is maybe clarity. Right? I'm going to be clear because that's what's important in this particular transaction. Others that may be, I want to put people at ease because there's conflict or there's some bad feelings that could result from it. Right? Others, I want to make a good impression because you just never know who you're going to meet on a plane. Right? And you sit next to them and you go, wow, I end up working for them a few years down the pipe. That happens here all the time to students. Right? Because they have no idea that this really is a small town. Even though Hampton Roads is a big metropolitan area, it kind of operates like a small town. They have no idea that the person sitting next to them on the bus they may be working with or may be their employer, or the person sitting in class may actually be a future employer. So what does that mean? Sometimes it's clarity, sometimes it's dealing with emotions, sometimes it's dealing with just creating a good feeling for people to be, that they're welcomed, right? And so what I'm going to do in the next 40 minutes, give or take, is give you just some brief insights into two models, okay, two brief models, and then three sort of qualities or characteristics, okay? So if you're keeping track, I'm going to give you two models first, two sort of extended example models, and then I'm going to give you three sort of points to think about, okay? So 2 examples and 3 points, got it? So keep track. So what we're going to do first, communicating our best, 2 examples, 3 qualities, all right? First, when a child enters a transaction, all of a sudden adults become really great communicators. Did you ever notice that? Right? A child enters in and everybody goes, oh, it's a little child. Because you guys don't, right? If I were to take you over to the Child Study Center and say, okay, let's all play with the 3-year-olds, and I were to ask you to give a presentation to the 3-year-olds, I do this for my children's communication class. They go over and then they give puppet shows. And I give them hard ideas. I say, okay, take an idea like justice or peace and make it intelligible to 3-year-olds. Boy, do they get scared. And I have 3-year-olds deciding if it's good or not. You know, and they go, really? It's tough to do. But all of a sudden, everybody wants to do things like the qualities I have listed here. Everybody becomes hyper-appropriate because they're children. They're children in the room. We have to be appropriate, right? We have to get their attention and keep it. That's not easy to do with 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 15-year-olds, right? Everyone has to, how do I get their attention and keep their attention? Multiple things working here. We have to become clearer with children because we don't want to convey things when they don't understand what we're saying, although half the time I'm not sure they understand what they're saying. If you're a parent especially, you go, I don't think they got it. And as teachers, we think sometimes, I hope they get it, right? But do we know? Sometimes we know in the exam, but sometimes we don't. Qualities like effective, engaging, memorable. Boy, the memorable part, that would be nice. If we're communicating at our best, with children especially, we want to be memorable, right? You all have teachers that were memorable in your elementary and secondary and middle school years, right? That were just unbelievable teachers that you went, wow, I remember Mrs. So-and-so, right? My second grade teacher, Mrs. Gates, God rest her soul, she was one of the most fantastic people I met in my life. I remember her lessons like they were yesterday, even though that was quite a long time ago. Right? She made the difference because she was engaging. She was memorable. She did things in that class that pulled me in to her stories and to her narratives, and I couldn't not want to participate. It was just, you had to participate because it was so cool. They model optimal communication skills. I want to draw your attention to the picture, okay? You see what's happening here is we've got an adult interacting with a child, interacting at eye level, okay? Now I'm down with her. I'll comment on this in just a second with another example. But take a look at what they're reviewing. Can you see what they're reviewing over here? All right, what are they reviewing? What's it look like to you? Have you seen something like that before? A cardboard sheet? A report card. A report card. Isn't that a little difficult thing to review with a child if you're a teacher or if you're an adult? Again, we don't know if this is a mom or if this is a teacher. But look, she's looking at an evaluation, right? And then the teacher is right there working with her through the evaluation. There's smiles going on. Now, of course, it's staged, but not all times when we have to communicate report card information is it going to be happy times, right? We're not going to get, but at least this person here is attempting to model effective interaction by being with her in that moment as she's giving her that information, right? Parents make huge mistakes with this this area when they're communicating evaluations because our tendency is to look for the dark side, right? What's missing, what's absent, what's not there on the report card, right? Our eyes tend to go to that C or that D and ignore the A's and B's, right? We go, oh, okay, and then we bring that up right away, right? We go, instead of saying, how cool is it that you got all this other stuff, we tend to look to the negative first. It's sort of what my wife does after I've cleaned the kitchen. Right? She finds things. I don't, she's really, I could work hard and clean it, but she'll look and go, I'll go, oh, she's right. I missed it, right? But how does it make me feel? Now, she knows over the years that I'm pretty tough and can take it, and it's just how it is. We've been married for 30 years, so, she's going to find stuff. I just know she's going to find stuff I didn't do properly. But that's okay. But at least with this evaluation that's going on here, the child will at least feel connected. Okay, there's some support, there's some encouragement, and evaluations are always going to make us feel defensive. We do it all the time. We have to evaluate. And by its nature, any evaluative message, whether it's an umpire calling a ball in a strike or a referee at a basketball game or a teacher making an assessment or a job person assessing at the end of the year performance appraisals, those things we have to do our entire lives. Provost Simpson has to spend her whole life assessing everything. This is good, that's not good, and she has to communicate in such a way to make sure people want to keep working and keep coming back and doing their job, keeping it positive and keeping it, I want to come back, okay? So validating, right? So the first example I want you to hold in your mind is the model of communicating with a child. Because I think we're at our best when we think of people not as children, but that whole idea of, I want to present something in an effective way because I don't want to mess it up. Whether they're communicating with an adult or a child or a teenager or an adolescent, I want to do it in such a way that they get it. Now, we can't be on all the time, but there's some times that are happier and easier to interact with others. That's my second example. All right, and they're also alliterative, children and cheers, right? What we're going to do is I want you to watch a little short video.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? All those nights when you've got no lights, the check is in the mail, and your little angel hung the cat up by its tail, and your third third fiance didn't show. Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name. Roll out of bed, Mr. Coffee's dead. The morning's looking bright. And your shrink ran off to Europe and didn't even write. And your husband wants to be a girl. Be glad there's one place in the world where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna go where people know people are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name. Where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. Where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. Where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came.
Have you seen the TV show? Remember the TV show?
I never knew all the words to the song.
They didn't play the whole version. Obviously, for TV, it needs to be timed, and the show, you know, clearly the problems and the struggles of everyday life. You want to go to a place where you can escape. But what I want to focus your attention on is where everybody knows your name and they're always glad you came. Because I think in these contexts, we typically also want to communicate at our best. We forget ourselves and we just move ourselves into that space because everyone cares about us, right? We're welcomed, right? We feel like, hey, everybody's, you know, if you remember the character Norm that's pictured in here, right? When Norm would come into the space, what did they do? Norm! Hey! Right? Imagine what our classes would be like if we welcomed students like that. Right? That's the Cheers model I'm talking about. So when you enter a child enters the discourse environment, we become better. But think about if we could recreate this space where everybody knows your name and they're always glad you came at Old Dominion. Right? To our classes where they go, I can't imagine not going to Dr. Beck's class because it's just so cool. I feel welcomed and loved and nurtured and cared for and wonderful. Right? Because at the end of it, it's, now I'm not advocating that we all go to bars and drink and all that, but students, that's why I have an asterisk there. But the idea here is to keep that feeling, right? Everybody knows your name and they're always glad you came, right? Because we want to communicate at our best if we're invited to, okay? So keep in mind children and also keep in mind cheers as we go through these next qualities. These are three qualities and characteristics that I'll argue are really important when we're communicating at our best. If we're really, really at the top of our game, these are things that we need to think about. First is what we call person-centeredness. Okay, person-centeredness. A person-centered communicator adapts their messages not to their abilities, but to their listener's abilities. Right? They figure out what their listener needs. Right? And again, with children, that's difficult. That's one of the things that's important when we think of communication as a lifespan phenomenon. Think about communicating with a 3-year-old all the way to an 82-year-old. Right? Communicating with 82-year-olds is very different than communicating with 3-year-olds. Right? They have different linguistic abilities, different backgrounds, different histories, different ways of being, although those of you who work with seniors might think there's some similarities there too. Right? But their needs are very different, right? So what do they need? How can they best position themselves to listen to us? So the model is sort of the opposite. I want to know what the listener wants. I want to know what the listener's needs are so that I can adapt my messages to have them fit, okay? Second quality is the messages should convey an understanding of the listener's beliefs, attitudes, and values. We call them BAVs. Okay, when we teach students public speaking, we teach them to work with the beliefs, attitudes, and values that are operative in the room, but also the bigger context. Because they can give a speech that's taped in a classroom, but that speech might go out to YouTube or might go out in other contexts. And so you got to think, what's the audience I'm dealing with? What are their beliefs? What are their attitudes? What are their values? And that means doing a little bit of homework. So who am I communicating with? So when I'm sitting across in my desk in my office from a student, I have to know who they are. So what are they into, right? And it may be very different from my vantage point, but that's not what's important. If I want to be effective with them, I have to know where they're at, right? What makes them tick? What kinds of struggles are they bringing, right? When I work with my graduate students, what I hear a lot is struggles about money, struggles with paying for things. And as we all know, it's always struggles with time. With graduate students, it's always time. Working in the thesis especially, they're just stressed and they can't believe it, and they got this deadline. And, so I have to know that when I'm interacting with them to be effective. Because I don't want to ask them to do extra things. I don't want to put extra burdens on them. Plus, I also don't want to keep reminding them of the stress they're under. Oh, by the way, how's that thesis going? That seems like an innocuous question, but it's actually reminding me of my stressors. So what I want to ask them is, how's it going in general? And get them to maybe thinking about other things. We also got to convey understanding of what the listener needs at the moment. And this gets at the emotional side of things. We all have different needs at different times of the day, at different times in our lives, at different times of the week. And it's going to change. It's always a moving target, right? My wife is a first grade teacher. And I noticed some parallels between first grade teachers and college students, right? They're real interesting because they get moody towards the end of the day, right? When they get hungry, right? They get kind of cranky. About midterm, when they're doing stuff, they also get a little cranky and tired. The week before spring break, they go bananas, right? And our students just leave. They just go, oh, I'll take my early, hey, I don't have to be on Thursday. I'll cut on a Wednesday, and I'll take 2 weeks, right? And they sort of play those games, right? But we have to understand that. So if we set up things that we want them to be effective with, the timing of it's going to matter, right? When you put your tests, when you put your quizzes, when you put your assignments, maybe the timing and the rhythm of that matters. This way we could fit our needs and our objectives in with theirs. So person-centeredness, right, that quality or characteristic came out of a number of researchers at the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana. And for years and years they've been working on that whole idea of what it means to be person-centered, as a comforter, as an informer, right? But that person-centeredness, when I'm dealing with my family members at home, whatever context I'm interacting with, I have to tune into the person that's in front of me or the people that are in front of me. What are their particular needs at this moment? And how can I address my messages to best affect them? Okay, so person-centeredness is the first quality. Second quality I want to address is what we call immediacy. And this one, in research that's been done at Harvard and in social psych as well as in communication studies, you get a tremendous bang for your buck communicatively if we reduce the psychological distance between a speaker and a listener. Okay? If I'm with you, if I convey messages of being there, okay, being there with them at that moment, right? I reduce that psychological distance. They feel connected, okay? Now, that might be something as simple as making eye contact with them when you're teaching them, right? Making extended eye contact, not too much, because then it gets creepy, right? Because if you start doing this, they'll go, why are you looking at her so much? That's a little too long. But making certain that we make eye contact with them when we're interacting in a large thing. Plus, when we're in an office context, you got to look at them. Right? If you want to reduce the psychological distance, you can't be doing this. Yeah. What was that you needed? Okay, just a minute. Right? Oh, I got the phone call. Right? What that's saying is, I'm not here with you. You're communicating. I'm not here. You're not here. We're not here. We might as well be somewhere else. We could do this virtually. Right? It really means clearing the desk and being with them. Right? Being with them at the moment in that class situation or in those interactions. We have to literally be with them. We have to convey that we're sharing time and space. And this is actually a challenge with cell phones today, right? That cell phone is going to come in as that device that changes time and space, right? Because you have people sitting there, their phone will ring, and then they want to take the call. Oh, excuse me, I got to get this. Basically, I want you to disappear, right, for a while. Okay, right? Especially if it's students sitting there with you. You go, come on, you're supposed to see me. You're not supposed to be taking phone calls, right? We don't really have good norms developed yet for these new technologies. As they've raced into society, society has embraced them, and our children have embraced them big time, right? If you take a look at high schools today, it's absolutely amazing. The doors open at 2 o'clock at Virginia Beach schools, and the kids flood out, and what do? They whip out their cell phones. Now, the bus rides are actually pretty quiet, because they're all click, 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 as they're texting and taping and interacting, right, with each other on these devices. It's actually pretty silent. Because they love doing that. But that also has an isolating function, right? they're not there with each other, right? They're no longer present to each other. Now I've got that device that's between us. Sometimes devices are good, but we don't want to have things. If I want to increase immediacy, I've got to make sure I'm there with you. I'm ready to listen to you, and you're ready to listen to me. Okay? And again, sometimes these distractions get in the way, and then we'll lose things. We'll reduce immediacy, right? And then the idea of cheers, the feeling of cheers, and also the feeling of working with children. When we're working with children, we gather them close, right? We typically don't want to talk to children at this distance, right? In the Child Study Center, when Catherine Kersey designed it, she designed those spaces to be close and also instructionally appropriate, right? She's got the floors all laid out so the children know where to sit, and she's got the tables all set up at children height. They listened to children when they designed that building, totally, right? Because the windows, if you notice, if you ever walk through the Child Study Center, the windows are at your knees, right? Well, why would they do that? Well, so kids can see out of them, right? Of course, little children, tables and chairs and stuff, it's all laid out at child size. It's also a space that doesn't use media much. They have a television set in one of the rooms, but the others are media free, right? Again, that's really important when we're working. If I really want their attention, right? What you got is their attention live in that room with manipulatives, with the puppets, with the things that they need to be able to interact, right, live and work on their conversation skills, because that becomes really important. We know from research that people who have really good conversation skills, they can make the transition to the digital environment pretty easily. But people who've got good digital skills but poor conversational skills, it doesn't work in the reverse, right? If I can text in good messages and email good messages, right, those skills don't necessarily translate well into conversation. They're different value systems, right? In the mediated system, we're dealing with a value of expediency. Get it done quick, short, right? Short messages, short little bursts. Well, that works against immediacy, right? Okay, tell me you love me, but you got 132 characters to do it. That's all. Well, can I take more? I'd like to, use more characters, and I'd like to use the space, and I'd like to, bring you into my world, and it's okay just to give them the characters if that's the best we can do. Then we have to use other rhetorical devices in those messages, like little emoticons, smiley faces, little cutesy things to say, I'm smiling while I'm reading this. The problem with those is they become sort of cliche, right? You LOL, right? You laugh out loud. And people go, yeah, putting in there, I know it's LOL, laugh out loud in your text message, but everybody puts that in there, right? See you later, with a C and a U and a, right? And they don't spell anymore because, again, expediency is what they want, short, truncated. And then when you receive the message, do you linger over it, savor it? Do you savor your text messages? Do you just curl up with them and embrace them and go, oh, my text message, just a beautiful thing? No, of course not, you don't. Right? It's a text message. It's a dead device. It's an electronic device. I curl up with humans, right? And I bring them in, like the mom and the daughter telling the secret here, or like at Cheers where you go in and everybody knows your name, right? I think in places like Old Dominion, large universities, it's real important as often as possible to shrink that space. Make it so that it feels immediate, right? Because otherwise the students wander around. I think the library has done a fantastic job. If you look right out there, they're there. See, they're in a small group right there that's actually living what we're doing right now. They're interacting, they're connected to their devices, but they can also talk to each other, right? And they can move the space around. I think it's absolutely fantastic to increase immediacy, right? And what immediacy does is it increases all sorts of things. Student evaluations go up, right? Your immediacy increases, the students go, what a great teacher. Why? Well, he was just there for me. And that's what they'll say in their evaluations. He was there for me, right? And even though they don't know what all that means, that could mean something like I caught him in his office or I had a nice conversation with him. But that's why I think it's right when you're on all the time, because with students you never know where you're going to encounter them or what their needs are going to be, or right? So we want to be able to be on when they're in our presence. So high immediacy, all right? Third group of qualities or third group of characteristics is something that I've been researching now for about 7 or 8 years. Dr. Beck and I have been working on a current group book project. I published 2 books recently on positive communication. What I've been working on lately is connecting communication to happiness. Okay, I've been using the positive psychology material that's coming out of the University of Pennsylvania, and we published a book at the beginning of this year called The Positive Side of Interpersonal Communication, where we're looking at all the things that make interpersonal communication fun, happy, exciting, interesting, keep us coming back. And the one we had just come out about 3 months ago, the Positive Communication and Health and Wellness book, says there's good health reasons to do these things. Okay? Because when you're angry and you're frustrated, what you're actually doing is you're increasing your heart rate, you're increasing your respiratory rate, you're getting all sorts of chemicals to happen, and you're harming yourself in the process. Those anger feelings aren't really good for the person who's experiencing them. They're certainly not good for the person who's hearing it as you express it, right? There's health reasons to do some of these things. So when we think of messages that are positive, here's just some of the qualities I think of. Messages that welcome, right? Like, Norm, right? You want to go in. You just want to go in. When they say, if somebody comes in your room and yells your name out and they're so excited to see you, you want to go back, right? You want to go back. One of the things we're doing with our master's students is we've started something a little bit different. We eat together every week. The graduate students and the faculty and I, we go over and we patron all the restaurants that are all over on the other side of Hampton Boulevard, and we welcome them in to eat with us. 5:30 to 7, every Tuesday, we're there eating. And what we do is welcome them in, right? Bring them a part of it, saying, you're here, we're glad to, you know what's going on, right? Gary's been there, we interact, he comes to regular dinners, and what that does is it increases our immediacy, but it makes students feel wanted, right? I care more about you than just coming to class and paying your tuition and leaving, right? Because especially at graduate studies, I think that's we need to do more for our graduate students when we're developing and socializing them as professionals. Messages invite positive emotions. And notice I want you to notice how I expressed it here. We invite people to feel good, right? I want you to feel good. I want you to be at your best because then I can be at my best, right? If I welcome you to be at your best, right? That's what I want with my students. I want them to be at their best. I want to welcome them to be their best. I want to invite them to be happy and feel good about themselves. I want those positive emotions coming out. Now, I don't want them all the time to be like it's at Disney World, right? Because those people are paid to be happy. They're required. It's a requirement. When you go to Disney World, you have to be happy and convey it. It's just a requirement of the job. You'll never see a frowning Disney employee. That will never, ever happen because the brand says, no, you must be happy at all times. Now, that's not humanly possible unless you're getting paid for it, right? Then I'm happy because they're paying me. But I do think over time that we have a student in our program, Brian Lindholm, who worked for Disney, who's going back to work for Disney. Hopefully he's finishing his master's with us. He said after a while, though, you just sort of smile normally because that's sort of what you do. You get used to it, right? You know, you start smiling for pay, and then you just sort of smile as the default. You just sort of go, okay, just smiling because it's, right? But he said also you got to imagine the people that he had as clients when he was working for Disney. He operated a ride one summer. He was operating the Splash Mountain ride, and he said most of the people that were there just want to be there, just like at Cheers, because it's the best of jobs. They want to be there, you want to be there, you're getting paid. It's summer, it's Disney, it's great. You know what a great thing, right? If we could do that to get people to display their emotions positively. So when I'm working with kids, we want them to display their emotions. I want the students to say, I'm not too happy today. Okay, well, let's talk about that. It doesn't mean being perpetually happy. It doesn't mean being a cheerleader for happiness. But what it does mean is look for good things because they're there, right? Dr. Beck and I did a study last semester, right? A year ago, 2 semesters ago, right? Where we tracked students over a 7-day period. We did an experience sampling method study where we texted them at 3-4 intervals during the day. And then what we did was we asked them to write down the things that were happening in their lives an hour before. And then we were getting them to be conscious of the positive message experiences that were happening, right? And what they did is at the end of it, they got tired of us texting them 3 or 4 times a day at random hours. You know, that sort of got old. But the outcome was they became more aware of all the good things that actually were there, right? That they didn't realize before. At the end of the day, they went, boy, I got, somebody helped hold the door for me. I didn't even pay any attention to that before. Somebody said something nice, gave me a compliment. I wasn't paying any attention to that, right? So at the end of the week, they went, wow, there's a whole lot more. And I especially think at Old Dominion University, there's just a lot of great stuff going on that sometimes we ignore because it's just Old Dominion. And I hear that, I go, no, there's some great stuff. You should pay attention to what's going on. And again, if you acknowledge it, it's there. Instead of looking for that D, right, on the report card, you're looking for the A's that are around you, okay? Messages that invite the positive qualities of communicators. Martin Seligman, who's at the University of Pennsylvania, he's a psychologist, and Chris Peterson, who was a colleague of his at the University of Michigan, who recently passed away, wrote a book about 3 years ago, where their intention in the book was to display all the positive qualities and characteristics that human beings have at their disposal. Right? Communication, psychological, everything that's good in the world, let's put it in a book. And what they did is they want to be able to measure all of it. Okay? And what the book has in it, they call the book, in psychology, are you familiar with the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual? It's the one psychiatrists use to diagnose mental illness. Well, Seligman and Peterson call this book the Anti DSM. Right? It's diagnosing bravery, truth-telling, love of learning, honesty, right? Spirituality, all the good stuff. And it's measuring and saying, well, why can't we look at this? When Martin Seligman became president of the American Psychological Association, he said, I want to be able to say more than you're not mentally ill, go have a nice life. Because up till that point, that's what he said psychology could say, right? You have no mental illness, have a nice life. He wanted to be able to say more, and there is more that can be said, right? Because we can look at all these qualities and characteristics that are positive, that are good, right? So what I'm interested in doing, what we've been working on, is the idea of habits, right? There are communicative habits where I can bring out things like, if I want honest children in my classes, or honest students, or if I want my own children to be honest, how do I invite honesty? Right? What can I do communicatively to get them to be honest with me and to say, way to go, honesty. I love the honesty. I cheer honesty, right? And it goes back to a simple idea working with children, right? If you take a look at how Catherine Kersey's people work with children and people like my wife, if you want a first grade class to do something for you, right, you point out some good habits. Look how she's taking notes.
You're
so
not crazy now, have a good life.
So diligently. She's sitting there, she's taking notes, she's so focused. Wow. What do the kids in the room want to do? All of a sudden, I'm taking notes, me too. Look at me taking notes, right? I'm taking notes, see? And I got 2 notes, and I got more notes than you, right? And now everybody's taking notes, right? Good preschool teachers, good first grade teachers have that strategy where they go, let's point out one positive thing, instead of saying, you know, so-and-so's not sitting up, so-and-so's not listening, hey, pay attention over here, come on, pay attention, right? There's really no need to do that. They'll want to catch up, right, if the cool thing is happening here, or over here, or wherever it's happening. They'll want to catch up, right, because you're praising them, you're getting them involved. So what we're doing was we're inviting positive qualities and characteristics. We're pulling that out. Right? So if I want a brave student, or if I want a, you know, bravery is, again, we think that's only for firefighters and soldiers, but bravery is, I come to the office to talk with you about my paper that I failed, or that I got a really low mark on, right? I think that's a brave thing for a student to do. If we can invite it and say, I love the bravery, you know, it's a really brave thing to do, right? I absolutely applaud that, and only people of high character can do such things. Right, let's talk about your paper now. Maybe we work on the next thing to make the next one better, or whatever it is, the examination, right? We make the exam better. But I want to pull out, because think about it, when we're communicating at our best, I'm inviting them to be at their best, then I'll be at my best, right? Because it just builds off of it, right? They want to do more stuff, and they're cool and excited and interested and engaged, right? They want to do more, and so we invite more. So the next project we're working on off this is looking at habits. Because I think some of these things, unfortunately, we get to be habitual, where we don't look at these positive things. We're so habituated into looking at the dark side of humanity and the dark side of what we do that we ignore all the cool messages that are going on, all the interesting things. We ignore that we're at our best, or we ignore when somebody else is not being at their best. But I think something like a quick compliment, that's a really important thing to do, right? I mean, think about how it makes you feel, right? If you wear, like the jacket you wore today, I like that jacket. That's very cool. Right, yeah, that's nice. And now, he might wear it again. Socha said it was a cool jacket. I think it is. I like it. I would get one too. Right? You know, it looks professorial. Yes. You know, it really does. It looks, you know, and it really looked cool. This time of year, especially with the snow, it's real appropriate. You know, but now it's at least, hey, okay, I got something I can wear. Right? I've got something that I can. That's kind of nice. Somebody paid attention. How tragic it is if we get something new and we walk through days, weeks, months, and no one notices, especially at home, right? I always want to notice when my son and my daughter and my wife are doing something different. And they go, yeah, it looks great. Way to go. I like that. Ooh, that looks interesting, right? Especially with teenagers. They love the attention because they're absolutely ego-driven, right? They love it, love it, love it. Look at me. I know. I'm good. Yeah, you know. I'm good. Yeah, I know. You look good today. I know. Thank you. Yeah, you know, but that's okay, right? That helps him to be better, right? Because again, the world out there we know isn't positive. We know the world out there, when you leave the friendly confines of ODU, or even sometimes within ODU, isn't that way. It doesn't invite students to be at their best. It doesn't. It gives you an assessment. It gives you a task. You do the assessment. You get this thing, and you move on. And then you go, you know, cry or cheer to yourself in your room by yourself, right? I think, wow, you know, that's not like what Cheers would do. If I was at Cheers, right, I could bring my paper in, and people would go, "You got an A, way to go, Norm, yeah," you know, or "You passed, yay." You know, again, depends what level of achievement you're after, right? Passing could be a good thing, right? So positive qualities and characteristics, the welcoming feeling of Cheers, the welcoming feeling of children, bringing them in, increasing immediacy, right? When you look at the picture with the welcome back home, we have these here all the time. When the ships come in, that's a Norfolk thing, right? They've got a statue to it in Town Point Park, right? They literally, it's such a positive moment, a positive communication moment, we've immortalized it in a statue. Right? You know, well, we can do it more than just when the ships come home, right? You can overwhelm your spouse tonight, right? Or your significant other, or your friends. You could just welcome them home. And then unless they get suspicious, why are you so nice? Right? You're being so nice to me. What do you want? You know, because again, that's where because it doesn't default to happy. It defaults to habitual, come and go. Hey, how's it going? You know, whatever. Good, nice day. Yeah, good. Okay, what are we eating? Okay, we're eating this. You know, and you go through that mumbling. But think about what it should do if you said, "Bang, they're home. Norm, I'm glad you're home. Wow, fantastic. How was your day? Good. Okay. Listen, I prepared you a brilliant dinner. Really? We're eating? Yeah. Come on, sit down, take a load off. We're going to have a great dinner." And then we'll spend some time talking after or during. Wow, that's a little different. When I hear from my students, they don't eat together anymore. Have you heard that? Yeah. You know, they don't eat together anymore. And I think that's just absolutely sad because they miss out on those conversations, right? So I said, why would you want to not eat with the people in your own house? It's like drive-by family. You know, you just drive by, eat, grab the thing. No, there's no stopping off. Sometimes I think that happens here too with our commuter students. They sort of drive by Old Dominion, sort of wave, you know, as they get across the car, you know, and get in, and they want to park right next to the building that they're in. I think they could like to park in the building if they could, right, and a space with their name on it. Now that would be welcoming, but probably not affordable, right? We couldn't.
Well, I think it's not just the students that would like to do that.
Oh, the faculty would like to do that too. I see. Welcome us all into our parking spaces with our names on it, right? Wouldn't that be cool? That would be probably very cost prohibitive, though, I imagine, to get your own parking space with your name on it. I don't think anybody does here, right? Yeah, there's no space. No, you know.
Buy one for $800 or $1,000.
The what?
You can buy a spot for $800 or $1,000.
Yeah, but do you get your name on it though? Yeah, no name. You get a number. Oh, boy, that increases immediacy. I got my number. I did one of that for 1 year. My wife said we should get you a parking place because you're teaching at night. You're teaching so late. Wouldn't it be great if you could have your own space? Because sometimes if you get here after 11, I have to park miles away. So one semester we did that, but the problem was people kept parking in my spot. And then I had to call and get them yanked out, and I had to drive around anyway. So I thought, well, what's the point of that? You know, it's not good, right? It didn't make me feel too welcome. I'll just walk. Right, and I find my spaces where we can walk. So, person-centered, highly immediate, positive with our students, just like with our children, and just like at Cheers is what I'm after. Right now, notice I didn't say something that's in the title. What did I not say in the title of this thing? I didn't mention not a word of it.
Respect.
Respect. Good, because you know the slides, right? Paying attention, right? Good. Respect. I gave an entire presentation and I didn't even mention the title of it. Why did I do that? Why did I do that?
Because you wanted to model.
Yes. And respect, good, go ahead. Yeah, respect is an outcome, right?
You wanted to model the respect that you were telling us about.
Good, right? Respect is an outcome, okay? RESPECT is an outcome of positive interaction. Because if I walk into an environment and I'm with somebody who cares about me as a unique human being, right, cares about the unique qualities and characteristics, right, and is highly immediate, right, is like a Mr. Rogers, right, you know, is just brings you into his world and makes you feel nice and warm and comfortable and happy, right, or it Cheers, like they did with Norm, as well as positive, right. I think mutual respect happens as an outcome of that, right? It's not you will respect me, right? Do you remember the movie Paper Chase? A long time ago, there was a movie called The Paper Chase. Do you remember what it was about? Paper Chase? Harvard Law School, right? Right? And in the movie The Paper Chase, there was a contracts teacher. His name was Kingsfield. Okay, he was played by Houseman, I believe. Old, crusty. He would come into his lectures, he'd bang his book down on the podium, and he would start grilling his law students. Okay? And there's a scene in there that's really famous where there's a student, Mr. Hart, who's in there. And very famous scene where Mr. Hart doesn't know the answer to his question. Because you've got to stand in his classes to answer. You stand and answer to Kingsfield. And he stood up and said, "Sir, I don't know," and sat back down. And, of course, his peers were like, you know, like, what's going to happen next? So Kingsfield went in his pocket, pulled out a dime, and said, "Come up to the front. Mr. Hart, here's a dime. Go call your mother and tell her there's serious doubt about you passing Harvard Law." Okay, again, you can see how dime is, you know, dating ourselves. Obviously not positive, obviously combative, obviously why would you want to come back to that, right? Can you imagine doing that to a student? Telling them, go call your mom, you ain't going to pass Old Dominion, you're not going to graduate, there's no hope for you? How horrible that would be. But that sort of was the educational model we inherited once upon a time. When I was a student, right? Some of us remember, right? You know, we remember the ways in which we were treated, right? Absolutely.
I had a biology professor who said he used our semester-long biology journals as an insomnia cure.
Right. I'm sure we all have these stories, right? We remember going, I remember a teacher, right? I had a professor once who told me just horrible things about my writing as a doctoral student, right? You know, where did you learn how to paragraph? A mediocre school of journalism? You know, and you get, whoa, okay, so we know where that is. Now, philosophically, they were into this sort of, I will build you up because you're going to get knocked around anyway, and so if you survive me, you'll survive the world. That's sort of what was the philosophy right back then, of that, the way in which teachers and students related to each other. That was then. Today, it's much more companionate learning. I'm a guide with you, with my students, right, as we learn these things together. Right? I'm with you in this process, right? We have to shrink that because to be at our best, we want them to be at their best, right? And I know you all have stories, right, when the outcome was beyond cool with your students, right? When at the end of the day you went, wow, you know, you went home and I did it, right? Right? I know Sandy's got advising stories, right? Those stories, because Sandy's a nationally award-winning advisor. I know she's got, you want to give us one of the positive outcomes?
Oh, I've got one. He's graduating this semester. Didn't think he would make it. Was in a car accident. All sorts of things befell him. I met him after his first semester when he finished below a 2.0. And here he is graduating. And so just meeting with him and doing the positive, helping him pick a major, all of those things really plays into it.
And he got through and he made it. It's a story of resilience and a story of heroism, right? He survived and makes you feel good, like, man, I'm earning my paycheck at Old Dominion. It's more than earning your paycheck. It's investing, right? What other stories that you have? What other stories you have that are just, I had this student once who was amazing and this experience.
I just had lunch with a former student, Candace Miller, who got a full ride into UVA in the sociology PhD program after she was an undergraduate with me. And you know, she came from a challenging experience at another university where she didn't quite fit, and so she, you know, had a bit of an edge to her when she came here. But I saw something that was, I thought, exceptional, and encouraged her to think differently, more positively about her education as an opportunity as opposed to something to get through. And she turned the corner and
then was able to even do more. We've added value, right, beyond. I think the Old Dominion is absolutely the most outstanding place in the world that adds value to students wherever they come, right? You know, because we have students, as you all know, that come from, you know, underprepared environments, less prepared, but, you know, so they start here, but they end up here. right? And at the end of the day, you all are tired, and so you go, I know, you know, we have to get them so far. But when we do, wow, how cool is that, right? For us as faculty and for them as students, because those are the alumni, they're going to come back and go, hey, Doc, thanks so much, you know, you need a building? I got a little extra cash, you know, maybe. I'm hoping, you know, hasn't happened yet, but you never know. You never know. Because if it's positive to them, they're going to want to remember you and keep it positive, right? Maybe just in coming back. Yesterday, I saw a student I had 18 years ago. I didn't know he was taking classes at the beach for a master's in accounting. He went up to Radford and got a master's in public administration. And now he's doing an accounting degree. And he just was walking by, and I saw him. I go, wow. And he's worked on some really prominent campaigns. He was interested in politics. And I always thought he was going to be a senator or something, because that's how he sort of rolled when he was in classes. But he said, no, I'm going to be an accountant. I'm going to be a CPA, but I won't forget you guys. You know, and I said, when you hit it big, you know, don't forget, we need a building. We can put you in touch with the provost. You can, you know, we need a communication building. That would be nice. But again, 20 years, you know, 25 years, that's a long time, right? We all have these stories of success, and I think the more we do of that around, right, it elevates, right? It makes everybody go, there is great stuff going on, telling those stories. And not just at graduation, right? We do that, right? We have remarkable students at graduation. And then, but the audience, you have to think of the audience you're telling it to. We know they're great because their parents are sitting there. Yay, of course they're great. They're all great. It's a love fest at graduation, right? And then it disappears. What we need is the day after graduation, the beginning of the year. We need a little more of the feel the love fest, I think, and it makes the day go better, right? So all the positive stories that you have, what you want to do is bring them in and keep them there with you, because those are the things that I bring to the office, right? Those stories. And I try to get the students to, as I interact with them, to bring out more, right? And if once you take this turn, it really becomes amazing, right? To me, it's amazing to look at the good things that are around me and to appreciate the good things that are around me. It's real, again, it seems like a pretty simplistic idea, but it amazes me how we don't do that. When I taught a positive communication course 3 semesters ago, the first time that we ever did it here, what was amazing to me is how hard it was for the students to go through a day being positive. They really had to struggle with that. I had them doing an assignment where I had them mapping out a 24-hour period where they were going to try to use the stuff from the course to be positive, and how difficult that was. What was interesting is the first thing that disappeared was television, because they said it was too hard to find good stuff to watch. They had to work really, really hard, you know, finding a great movie that was uplifting, you know. And so that disappeared. And so, and again, you think the newspaper. I mean, I listen to NPR every day. Do you listen to NPR too? Does that make you feel good? You know? Sometimes it could be uplifting. I like those stories that they do, right? Yeah, StoryCorps. I think StoryCorps is absolutely fantastic. Archive, and like, oh, there's one. Okay, you know, and then maybe there's something else. But it's a lot of bad news. You have to give yourself that in doses. We do need to be in touch with that, but if you live that, then not a happy day. Now, again, I don't want you isolating yourselves and just going, I'm going to read only positive things and only look at positive media. But if you start to think about, is this adding to my happiness, right? Is this contributing to us? And I think maybe a conversation with a loved one might do you better, right? You know, going to a place like Cheers and having a conversation with some of the students would do you better, right? At the end of the day, you'll go, that's great. You know, maybe it works having a conversation with a colleague up the corridor instead of emailing them, which makes me insane, right? They're like right there, you know, and we're emailing each other, right? Why not step over and have a conversation with them, right? Questions?
Moth radio, NPR.
Moth radio.
Really, a quick, I hope I can tell this really fast. The gist of it is, son comes home from school, father works from home. Meets son at door, opens the door and says the thing that you just hate to say, which is, how was your day? The kid goes, eh. Walks in his room, gets on his computer. The father walks in his room, you know, they're 5 or 10 feet apart, gets on his computer because that's what he does. Okay. And they're discussing instant messaging, which the son has insisted that the father install on his computer. So finally, one day, the father's typing away. The son says, Dad, had a crummy day at school today. And the father goes, holy cow, this is it. This is the moment I've been waiting for. So the son, because of that method of exchange, can actually discuss things back and forth. And they're doing it for the first time ever on the computer, until the father gets one of the notes from the kid that says, Dad, da-da-da-da-da, LOL, which you used earlier, of course. And the father thinks that that means lots of love. So the father proceeds, this is all new to him, to send out everything he sends to people. Aunt so-and-so died. And the father responds, oh, that's terrible, LOL.
More, absolutely, more ambiguity, because when we with a text message, we have less control over it. So when it goes away, I can control the reactions of it, right? It's gone. And if I get it wrong from the beginning, then I get it wrong, and it's going to stay wrong. Public relations.
Go back over 6 months and apologize to everybody.
Absolutely, public relations people know this, because if they make a mistake, they've got to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix it. Right, if you make a mistake with a family member, you can try to fix it. And by the way, that's a 5-to-1 process. On the positive side of things, there's research that shows for every negative, you have to have 5 positives to fix it. It's not 1-to-1. So if you're on the public relations side of things, think of that ratio. You screw up something, it's going to take 5 times the effort to be able to fix it, is the way it works. Okay? So if I have a negative exchange with my son or my daughter or my wife, especially with my wife, it's, I'm sorry, I'll cook dinner for you, here's the flowers, I'm sorry again, I'm really, really sorry, right? And now I'm up to 5, although she might require a bit more, to be able to fix it, right? And Gary's sort of a newlywed, so he understands this, right? It's year 2, right?
Year 2, yeah.
Yeah, year 2 of his marriage. So
constant positivity.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'll try harder, I got it, yes. Okay. Well, we're out of time, right? And I appreciate you coming, and I hope the ideas, if you're interested, there's a bibliography that I've included in the slides of a few of the books that we've been working on. The primer in positive psychology is a nice thing. There's some nice measures in there. It's a basic sort of oriented book. Martin Seligman's book on Flourish is really good. Right, that gives you a sort of a framework for the positive psych people. And then 2 things that I've been working with Maggie Pitts, who's a former ODU employee who's now at Arizona, and she left us because she didn't like, not necessarily because she didn't like us, but because her family is in Arizona, and it was a perfect job to be able to move home with her son to mom and dad's ranch. So Pitts and Socha, Positive Side Interpersonal, Positive Communication, Health and Wellness, they're all available on Amazon or wherever you get your books and stuff if you want to read more about the things we've discussed today. Thank you. I appreciate your time.